Good evening. I'm Tom Conrad, the Superintendent of Schools in the Nossif School District, and welcome to Superintendent Spotlight, a half-hour show dedicated to programs and people in our system. And I got a special one tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Keith Gawley. Keith, great to have you here.
Thanks, Tom.
And Keith is our Assistant Superintendent, and he has multiple responsibilities in the district. And so we're going to spend some time understanding some things he's working on, and dig deeper into some issues maybe that the district is facing. So great to have you.
Thanks.
And why don't we start with, we have a brand new curriculum and assessment committee that was formed last spring. What's that all about?
Great question. One of the tricks, as you know, with NOSSIT is the fact that we really are five different districts, and yet how do we get the districts to act in a common direction and a common theme? So the Curriculum and Assessment Committee really came up in terms of how do we get people on the same page with anything that has to do with curriculum or assessment. The Curriculum and Assessment Committee met last June. We identified 3 top priorities for the school year, and we then met again this past October and started to act upon those top priorities. So just to give you one example is curriculum alignment. Curriculum alignment, again, it seems like an easy concept in terms of you really want learning experiences to build upon one another, K to 12. So by the time the students get through 12th grade, they have really a solid foundation and a solid education that has built sequentially upon each other. But it's much easier said than done. So we're in the process right now of really looking at how do we take curriculum alignment and make it that the students, when they leave first grade, and what the expectations the first grade teachers have is really on par with what the expectations the second grade teachers have for students coming in. So we're looking at a system to build that really K to 12 and make that work so that it really is aligned even though we're 5 different districts.
The interesting piece for the viewer is to understand that the vast majority of these kids come into our middle school. And that's an issue, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And in addition to the fact that we've got the 4 elementary towns, when you start to factor in school choice and you start to factor in Truro and you start to factor in Provincetown, we're really working with some of these other districts as well, sharing resources, sharing ideas, so when the students do come into the middle school or the high school, they've had some common experiences and they've really have a common foundation.
Who's on the committee, Keith?
It's a wide mix. Naming all 15 might be tough off the top of my head, but we have everything from elementary classroom teachers, we have art teachers, we have technology integration specialists, we have several principals on the committee, guidance counselors. It goes in terms of runs the gamut across the board. Obviously at the high school level we'd have some additional content people in terms of science, history and social studies. So,
and all buildings are represented?
All buildings are represented, but we didn't want the committee to get too big. We really needed to keep the committee to a reasonable number, because even at our last meeting when we broke into 3 groups, getting a lot of the work done in a 90-minute block and really looking at the direction of the district, it's hard to accomplish in 90 minutes, and it would be that much more difficult to accomplish if we had an unreasonable number such as 30 on the committee.
Sure. Without a regionalized system, at times we can see our schools operating independently. And this is going to take a little bit of a different slant to it, isn't it, in the long run?
Yeah, one of the pieces, and again, we all probably are familiar with just some of the issues that a local district had regarding Karma Choice. One of our top 3 priorities is looking at social emotional learning of students, and part of that is really not only aspects of mindfulness. Really, Karma Choice is just a program that incorporates mindfulness, but it's really looking at how do we teach students responsibility. How do we deal with the substance abuse issue? How do we deal with our health curriculum across the board? So it's a broad scope, but that is one of our top 3 priorities that we're working on right now.
And it's critical that we align, because without it, we become so scattered that it's difficult to come up through the system and have some continuity and consistency.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again, I think it's just so important for the students to have those foundational skills, whether it be decision making, conflict resolution. How do you deal with a situation that you're angry? And building up those skills from an early age really allows the students to be more successful when they get to the older grade
That's
levels.
been a big push, hasn't it? And I mean, we have lots of viewers in different ages and so forth, and just in the last few years, we've seen a great deal of emphasis on the social emotional piece,
Yeah.
and that will continue, I would assume, at even a higher level.
Yeah, my hope, quite frankly, is we have the Habits of Learning document that a group of about 15 of us worked on the past 3 years. And we've finalized standards for social emotional learning. And those standards right now are on the elementary report card, and they're reported to parents as pro-social skills and approaches to learning. One of my hopes is that we get to that degree as well for the middle school and high school, so that if you're a science teacher at the high school, yes, you're grading the student based upon your expectations and the content standards, but you're also separating out some of those behaviors that are oftentimes included in a grade right now. Homework completion. At what point is homework completion just a separate issue? And it doesn't really say this is how strong the student is learning or able to apply their science knowledge. So I really want to get to that point where we're separating out the two different aspects of a child.
Sure, that's critical at the beginning years to put in place. I mean, if we can get, as you use the term, foundation, it should carry through the whole system. And well, I've always been intrigued by the 21st century skills of team building and how people have learned to work together. And that's an issue that we recognize going forward as well.
Yeah, and one of, it's interesting because there are teachers now that are doing self-assessments on collaboration and team building, meaning the students are filling out forms. How did you do working with your team today? Did you contribute? How were you at listening to others' ideas? Were you able to really come to a common agreement and understanding? And I think it's that opportunity for students to really reflect on their own learning, their own understanding, that leads to the greatest growth. So we all know children, you may have been one, I may have been one, that when we lost a baseball game at age 12, it was devastating. We were mad, we didn't shake hands with the student, etc. And I think that's the reality of we all have different personalities, we all have different strengths and different weaknesses, but how do we take that child that refuses to shake hands when they're age 12 and help them overcome that to understand that, you know, yes, it hurts to lose sometimes. But should that take away from what the other team was able to accomplish? And how do we build that as really a team effort and a team approach, which is so critical when kids enter the job market?
No question. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, and it's amazing how much the team building piece is played into the business world today. And that's where the vast majority of our kids are going out into that real world, needing those skills. So shifting gears, thank you. That was excellent. In terms of security, that's a big issue that you take care of for us. What's up and new, and where are we at with it? And obviously, we don't want to give our trade secrets away. But
Sure.
What are you working on?
No, we've had a group for several years now, really a school security committee that involves a lot of local police officers, school administrators, some staff, and we have made tremendous headway. As you know, we are in the second year now of implementing an application called Crisis Go. Crisis Go gives our teachers the opportunity to really respond to a crisis without that response being initiated by the office. So there are some aspects built into Crisis Go, including the chance to provide attendance, the chance to have checklists of if this is happening, what should I be doing, and the chance to communicate. So in the middle, if we're practicing a lockdown drill, students can be sending in their attendance from their classroom without a paper copy, without needing to access email. They can look at a map of the building, they can look at a checklist, and all of that information goes to a central location that includes police dispatch. So police dispatch has the app. It's really one of the headways that we've made. We also actually just heard It's today. So 2 days ago, we were awarded a security grant, a Homeland Security grant.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So $37,000 that will help build up additional pieces with Crisis Go, and we're also looking at registration. I apologize, it's probably more visitor software. So when people are coming into the building, you have a software system that's linked to federal and state databases that provides a visitor tag. It's called Easy Lobby, and that's one of the pieces we'll be able to implement along with additional training. One more piece, if I have time.
Go.
So next Monday, we are actually running a tabletop security exercise, and that will. We had just done one recently at a multi-hazard training in DY, but our tabletop exercise will really give the chance to bring together town administrators, school administrators, police officers, DPW, Cape Cod Hospital. It's actually being led by 2 FBI agents, Agent Coffey and Agent White. And they'll play out a scenario and say, if this happened, what would you do? What would your response be? So that exercise is actually being paid for out of the grant as well.
All about training.
Yes.
And that committee, that security committee, that's meeting on a monthly basis?
Yeah, so we're right now, we have met 2 times this year. The meetings go up and down depending upon the needs. So now that we have the grant, and now that we're moving forward not only with the tabletop exercise, we actually have to implement additional training measures with Crisis Go. And one of the ideas, and really truly a credit to Sergeant Gus Schnitzer out of Eastham, but Gus has gone into classrooms one by one and just played out with a teacher in the classroom, what would you do in this situation? And then he'll add on to it. All right, what would you do now? So that detailed training where really Sergeant Schnitzer is able to take the time to walk through with a classroom teacher, how would you handle it? I think that's the training that sticks, and that's the training that will have the greatest impact should a crisis ever occur.
Sure. I mean, it's all about keeping our kids safe and our staff safe, and it's I'm sure for some of our viewers it's difficult to imagine that schools had to be put into this position, but we learned a long time ago, starting with Columbine, that this is unfortunately something we have to deal with and be prepared for. And your efforts and the committee's efforts it have taken us a long way. So I mean, the buildings have continued to work at their own security, and we don't certainly want to give away all our details, but there is a different feel going into our buildings now.
Yeah,
everyone has to check into the office, and we have multiple cameras in different situations at different buildings and so forth. And this isn't going to go away, and this is going to continue. And because I think parents look to us to make sure that when their kids get on those buses or they drop them off, they can feel comfortable knowing they're safe. So
just to add on too is that the other piece we realize is in this day and age, should something ever occur, something that's say unexpected, so not a hurricane where you've got lead time, but something that might be more immediate, whether it be a gas explosion nearby a school, something like that, that students will be texting their parents within 10 seconds. And our response needs to take that into consideration in terms of the speed of communication and how we're handling these situations. So it is something that's ever changing.
And the parents, in the Crisis Go program, we have some the ability for parents to have some link into this?
Excellent, thank you for bringing that up. So there are probably 200 parents already who have requested notification as part of Crisis Go. And that notification would be sent out by the schools. It would be really important for parents, and I would encourage parents to do so, is around reunification. So if we need to move students from one building to another site or one building to another school building, that notification would be how we would communicate to parents. This is what you need to do in terms of directions to pick up your child at the other site. So that is one of the pieces that, again, many parents have taken advantage of, but we're hoping more will do so.
Sure. And talking about reunification and so forth, I mean, every incident calls for something different. And we're not in a position just to simply say, if we have an event, this is exactly where you would be going. Because we're shifting depending upon the situation and what's happening, and Crisis Go would be able to let those parents know
Right.
these shifts, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean we wouldn't use the other means of communication,
Of course.
but it is probably one of the pieces that just provides an alert that's immediate on a parent's phone. So it's quick and sufficient.
That's great, Keith. And thank you for all the work on this.
you
and
bet.
15 years ago, we would never imagined we'd be sitting here talking about this today. IB at the high school. I know we're filming this at the high school, obviously, and you have been heavily involved with the IB. So why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what's up with that?
Sure. So we meet weekly, meaning Principal McDonald and Dr. Amy Roberts, who's our IB coordinator. As you know, we have achieved candidacy, so we're in the candidacy phase right now for International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. We will be applying this coming spring for authorization, and in fact we have already had at least one meeting with really the staff at the high school that will be part of our IB teaching staff. We have another meeting next week, and we have a consultant coming in December to help guide us through and take a look at, all right, where do we stand with training for staff? What are the courses that we plan to offer for IB diploma program? And then how will this fit in with the kids' current schedules, and how will we inform kids and parents? So one of the aspects we're looking forward to is we're going to present to the current 9th grade, which would be the first class that would have the full experience of the diploma program. We're going to present to them on January 18th. That will be filmed and will be available to parents. And we're also going to do a student question and answer session. So we'll invite students here to the studio, give them a chance just to say, tell us more about IB. What questions do you have? And we'll answer those questions so parents can hear those answers as well.
So it's an additional program coming into the high school. And I think with many of our viewers knowing our school quite well, what happens with advanced placement?
Sure. So we are doing really consistent with the philosophy of the high school for a long time. We're giving kids and parents choices. So a parent and student may choose to be part of the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, and then they would be making that choice beginning of 11th grade and taking 2 years worth of courses to earn their IB diploma. That doesn't mean that students couldn't also take AP classes, take AP exams. Or students might say, no, IB is not for me. I don't want to be in the IB program. I'm going to stick with the AP program. So it really opens up doors and opportunities for kids. And I want to emphasize the point that our philosophy and our belief is it's appropriate for every student. Meaning that a student who wants to challenge him or herself, just like they can register for AP classes right now, they can register for IB classes. And we encourage that because part of what the International Baccalaureate Program philosophy is really learning from the diversity of others. So the more we have a diverse group of students, the better the program will be.
I'm hearing this. I understand a couple of years out we're going to be getting started with it. What is it? I mean, and it's really a little bit different approach to how kids will learn and so forth. Can you maybe just touch a couple of what you would think were key points?
Sure,
what you found to be very exciting?
Yeah, I think the key point is really understanding the IB learner profile, the 10 characteristics of the IB learner profile, and you can absolutely look those up online. We also have 6 courses that students are required to take, standard level or higher level courses. But the piece of IB that I think is unique is how do those courses play out in terms of how students know what they know, how do they apply what they know. Because in addition to the 6 courses, they also have a theory of knowledge course, a creativity, activity, and service course, and an extended essay. And the extended essay, would think of it as a college 15 or 20-page paper that builds, really bridges or builds together the pieces of what you might be learning in your math class, what you've learned in your theory of knowledge class, what you want to do for a creativity or a service activity, and how does that impact society and how does that impact you as a learner. So to me, I'm a strong believer in the program. As you know, I'm a strong believer in the philosophy, and I look forward to sharing with the students and parents.
I'm watching this now as a taxpayer and saying, so how much is this going to cost me? But we got a pretty unique way of bringing this into the school, don't we? So talk about what we think it's going to cost us.
Sure. Well, thanks to your efforts going back several years with international exchange students coming to the high school, those international exchange students pay a tuition that goes into a separate account. So that international exchange student account is really how we're paying for the training for all of the teachers, and how we're paying any of the fees, including like a candidacy fee of $4,000, an authorization fee. Each teacher who is trained is approximately $1,200, depending upon where they do the training. So it's not really overly expensive. And again, I look at it not only as becoming self-funded in the long term through the international exchange students, but also through school choice. And if we have the program available to students, and more students want to choice in to Nauset High School, it's really a great opportunity for them, and again, it helps pay for any of the costs associated with the program.
So what I hear you saying, Keith, is that the tuition money from the international students who come here for a year of study is really picking up our front costs for this program.
Absolutely.
From a staffing standpoint, will this mean all kinds of new teachers having to be hired and so forth?
Right now, no. So right now, we're really able to take the existing staff, identify those who are interested in IB, train those staff for particular courses. So there might be 2 staff people that are being trained right now for mathematics, might be 3 staff people being trained for science. And then that would become 1 block out of their schedule. So they could still be teaching the other courses that they're currently teaching, and then have 1 block that's an IB course.
So really no cost. I mean, we have a teaching staff for almost 1,000 students, and it's really retooling them and training them if they have desires to go in and teach some sections of IB. And if we were to be short teachers, would we look to retirements and so forth and replacing those positions with maybe IB teachers and so forth?
Absolutely. And in fact, we've already identified several staff who are interested in coming to Nauset who have IB experience. So at some point, you know, as the need arises, you've got a pool of candidates that you can pull from that have IB experience. You also have a pool that you can simply train to replace those that are leaving with retirements.
So in reality, using the tuition money from the international students and keeping our existing staff in place should provide us the staffing to get this done. Again,
I'm really looking forward to the next year and a half and going through the authorization process as well.
Wow. Well, thanks for all the work on that. I mean, this is a huge shift for us. And I can remember back doing some of the touring on it that with such a strong applied and fine arts department at the school, they were excited, weren't they, in terms of the recognition that they can get through the IB program for the rigor of some of their programs.
And fine arts, as you probably know, is one of the course requirements. And then students actually have the option of, can you combine that as part of your creativity, activity, and service component, and then have a second fine arts course. So.
And the strength of the high school, obviously, has been its ability to give parents choices and students choices in terms of what they want to take. This just is an expansion of that, really, for all of our families.
Absolutely, and I think, again, IB is internationally recognized. So, you know, AP certainly has its recognition, certainly has its benefits, but there are some schools that we brought up before that the acceptance rate for similar students, one from an IB who's earned an IB diploma and one who hasn't, is oftentimes double. So it might be, if you're trying to get into a highly selective college, it might change your chances from 10% acceptance to 20% acceptance.
Wow, that's exciting. Well, thank you for all that effort, Keith. It's going in such a great way, and I know there's a buzz on the campus about it, so keep it up. Let's get to grants. I mentioned money in the IB program and so forth, and it's not the most glamorous part of your job, I would dare to say, but you're responsible for a lot of money and a lot of grant writing and so forth. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So 3 primary grants right now. One would be Title I. That's a federally funded program. Basically, the money is determined based upon the percentage of low-income or economically disadvantaged students in each of the towns. So the good news is as the economy gets better, families get better in terms of their socioeconomic position. The bad news is that Title I funding goes down. So just as an example, we dropped $74,000 in Title I funding out of our Title I grant this past year. We also have the kindergarten grant. It was quality full-day kindergarten grant. That was bringing in approximately, again, $78,000 to the district. That has now been cut by the state. So that went from 78 to 0. And that was funding a lot of the educational assistants and support staff that we had in our kindergarten program. We also deal with a grant that's called Title IIA. It's an educator quality grant. That grant only was cut a few $1,000s, but that pays for all of our mentoring costs. It pays for a significant portion of professional development for staff. And we're just keeping our fingers crossed that the grant monies don't continue to decline, that we actually either level out or have an increase, because it's such an important source of funding for the district.
And for the process involves, you apply every year. I mean, and I've seen the form work. It takes a great deal of time, and ultimately we see it as positions in some cases. I mean, we've been able to fund some positions with this. Without this continued grant funding, we could see some people losing their jobs.
Just to give you an idea, is Title I funding pays for, this is counting both teachers and support staff, educational assistants, but it pays a portion of probably 21 positions in the district. And again, it's typically not more than 50% of that position, because then benefits would come out of the grant as well. But it's one of those cases that if you lose $74,000, it has an impact.
Well, keep up the great work with the grant writing, and you know, obviously it's competitive, and in some cases, unfortunately, in our state and nationally, we've seen some cuts, and let's hope those are behind us going forward. Let's talk about your style. I know I just saw recently that you're in the buildings, and you're going to be on a regular schedule for anybody and everybody to see you. Talk about what you're trying to establish.
Truth be told,
3.5
years ago, when the position of assistant superintendent was available, and I was debating whether or not to apply for the position. The big con that stood out in my mind was really losing the contact with the students. I think we're all in education for a reason, and that's because we care about students and we care about student learning. I had to look at this position as really an opportunity to have contact with more students in more buildings. So I'm thrilled that I can do that. And one of the ways right now is, in addition to having monthly curriculum office hours where I might be in the building to help staff address an issue or answer a question, it gives me the chance to also visit classrooms, see how the students are doing, it might be a brief interaction with a student, but it can be a very powerful interaction at the same time. And I don't want to breach any confidentiality, but I'll simply share with you, I had an amazing experience with a student, Kiara, who I won't say the last name, but Kiara was sharing her artwork and really the purpose behind her artwork when I visited her classroom last week, and it brought me to tears. So those are the pieces that you need to keep in order to really have, I think, an understanding of what's important in education and to do your job well.
Of course. So touching kids every day and working with teachers as if you're a member of the staff is so critical, isn't it?
Yeah, again, I love those opportunities, and if I had a way, with a little luck, in fact, theory of knowledge course, part of the IB program. If the student population and interest is great enough, I hope to be one of the theory of knowledge teachers, just to keep that contact.
It's safe to say that you've always seen yourself as a teacher first. And getting back into the buildings, and I know you always have been in the buildings, but on a more regular basis can only pay great dividends for our kids and for our teachers, because we're really focused on how do we improve student learning. and that whole social emotional piece, because much is being said in the system, of course, and all systems across our country, about the different type of student we're seeing and the problems that they're bringing to the classroom every day. So that's a critical piece. Just we're going to run out of time here in a couple of minutes, but obviously we're also watching some of the state, the Board of Education, in terms of new testing and the MCAS 2.0 and DDMs and so forth. That's something you've been focused on from day one as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma right now, just in the sense that the state is really in the midst of dealing with what they called student impact ratings. And to be very brief, it really had the opportunity for teachers to give common assessments to students. Based upon the student results, you were determining a teacher's impact on student learning. So as the state wrestles with that issue, and as they kind of negotiate with the various state unions, the bottom line for us becomes, how do we do assessment in a way that's meaningful to students, that provides feedback to the students and the parents, and that learning is promoted and student growth is promoted as a result of the assessment. So we're really looking at that district-wide, just to make sure our assessments are meaningful and valuable.
It's a hot topic.
A hot topic.
And that's going to be for our next show. So I want to thank you, Keith, for coming on today with me. And to our viewers, I hope you've gained some insight into some of the great work that Keith's doing for all our schools as our assistant superintendent. Thank you, and good night.